Harpenden, and make a wonderful play. Very descriptive, lots of lessons to be learned in this chapter. Specifically, Prabhupada in his purports goes to no expense in pointing out the faults of the philosophy of Mayavadi, specifically that strain which was taught by Shankaracharya. And here is a graphic example of an acharya, in one sense, a teacher who's teaching exactly that, the teachings of Shankaracharya, and he becomes dramatically transformed. As we have mentioned before, it's a dramatic transformation, and as His Grace Chandrasekhar Prabhu was nicely pointing out yesterday, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya wasn't an ordinary person. He was a very respected person in that community. So his transformation is a major transformation. You know? And you can see that he's had a complete, or not at this point. No, at this point, yes. At this point, yes. He's already had a complete transformation. That first thing that I noticed was that in the first verse we read, he describes as entering into Brahman as a punishment. I don't know if we caught that. He entered as a punishment. The impersonalists who do not accept the transcendental form of Lord Sri Krishna and who desire to merge as a Brahman effulgence, and also the demons who are killed by the Lord, they are punished. So this is now Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya correct, in one sense, correct understanding of actual Brahman effulgence, of becoming, or as mentioned in today's verse, so Yuja, becoming one. Is that right? Yeah, becoming oneness. He sees it now as a punishment. Yeah. Why does he see it as a punishment? Well, now he's tasting rasa, or he's tasting bhakti. Yeah. And in comparison to his dry, monastic, he was married, but dry, sudden in practice of Mayavad teachings, he's experiencing something completely different. He's experiencing actually a taste, experiencing actually bhakti. And it's described that the taste arrived from devotional service. It makes the so-called taste or happiness derived from Brahman realization to the water that's contained in the calf's hoof print. Yeah. So we shouldn't take for granted. I was also reflecting how sometimes we take for granted, or I take for granted, the taste we may get or may not get from devotional service. But the point here is that that taste that we have had, at least at some point, yeah, that is very, very special. Yeah. That taste, or that sometimes when we chant the holy name, it's just like nectar, or we take darshan, and it's just like nectar, or we're doing some service and we just, we feel completely satisfied at heart, we feel peaceful, that feeling that we feel when we're on the street and we distribute a book to someone, that warm feeling in the heart sometimes when we feel completely ecstatic. It does happen sometimes, doesn't it? Yeah. Happens a lot in the right consciousness. That is not to be had. That is not an ordinary experience. Yeah? That the say here, these impersonalists, generally these impersonalists which generally Prabhupada is preaching about, or the ones we have a picture of, for those Mayavadis who engage in staunch study and staunch severe austerities. Some of them do severe austerities to try and realize the oneness of everything. They try and they subject themselves to duality. Yeah. To realize the oneness, they will subject themselves to what they say the illusions of duality. So they, for instance, will subject themselves in the winter to freezing cold water, in the Himalayas. Yeah. They will stand up in the Himalayas in water up to the neck. And what they experience in, they will say, No, neti, neti. It's illusion. This is illusion. This is illusion. And then when summer comes, we mentioned this earlier, the blazing heat of the Indian summer, which is very hot, hotter than English summer, yeah, much hotter. They will surround themselves with fires, yeah, and build fires around themselves. And we mentioned before, so they put a fire on their head. I saw one picture where one yogi had this platform built on his head. There was a fire there. This is there's the sun, right? And then then experiencing that. It's not that neti neti. No, this is illusion. Yeah. So what we experience simply by the activities of bhakti, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Parasevam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atmanam, what we're experiencing is not to be had by these yogis, by these staunch Mayavadis. Yeah. So, but sometimes we shouldn't. There are reasons why we should, but sometimes we may take it for granted. Yeah. So sometimes we forget. Sometimes we forget the bliss of Krishna consciousness. Yeah, because we're so conditioned to suffering. We're so our condition is so strong that even sometimes when we experience the bliss of Krishna consciousness, it might be one kirtan. And then an hour later, when the kirtan's over, we're back in the dumps again. Because we just forgot. We just forget. And bhakti is like that. Sometimes the reciprocation is like that, where Krishna, where by our endeavour and by Krishna's sweet mercy, when Krishna sees our endeavour, the curtains will open and we get an insight into the real, actual nature of Krishna and his beautiful form and his pastimes and his name. And then it all seems very easy. Yeah? But because we're not quite mature yet, perhaps we lack in some humility, Krishna has to close the curtains. It's like we take darshan and the Krishna curtains open and they close. So then it's as if we never did experience it sometimes. You ever had that experience where, is that real? We experience that. And then there's they've got, and sometimes we forget. But what Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya is experiencing is, perhaps we could say to a larger degree, or we may not, but to a degree, is exactly what we are experiencing in our regular practice of devotional service. Yeah? And it's by experiencing this higher taste that one can quite easily comprehend or relate to this verse, where it describes that this is describing the 5 types of liberation, but Lord Kapila in the 3rd canto, he quotes much the same verse, and he quotes it in context where the devotee doesn't accept any of them. Yeah? The devotee doesn't accept Salokya. That means, everyone remember what that means? Salokya? Same planet. So that also takes some understanding. Who doesn't want to go to Krishna Loka? But the devotee, a pure devotee, a pure unadulterated devotee, he's not, in one sense that is not his main sort of quote unquote hang up, so to speak, not hang up, but his main ambition to go to Goloka Vrindavan. His main ambition is to serve Krishna, is to give pleasure to Krishna. Yeah? And if that's Salokya, means I can serve Krishna better, very nice. Yeah? Generally devotees, but generally Krishna brings them back anyway. Yeah? Krishna brings them back to his planet anyway, because he cannot bear a separation, and he wants to be very close to his pure, unadulterated devotees. Unless Krishna has some specific plan for that devotee. And there is devotees, for instance, whose eternal position, as far as I understand, is to remain in the material world with Krishna. Arjuna is one of those. Yeah? His eternal position, to be in his position is a Sakya. He's a constituted position, always be with Krishna. Specifically, he's always around when there's a battle, or Kurukshetra. Yeah? And he is. Yeah. So, devotees, but they're just desirous of service, and this is enunciated by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, specifically when he describes birth after birth, my Lord, he describes, isn't it?